Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Embracing the Cloud with Spectra On-Prem Glacier. I'm Bob Cohn, and I will be your moderator for today's conversation, and we hope it will be a conversation. We've actually got a couple of polling questions that we will ask you through the webinar. You'll be able to vote by clicking on screen. That will come up as we go. We also have a Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom screen. You can use that to write in any questions or even comments. The chat function is one way today, so don't use that to communicate with us. If we've got any links or anything that we need to share with you, we will drop those in the chat function. So use the Q&A if you have questions or comments. In today's conversation, it's interesting. We've had a lot of technology conversations over the years that I would call either or conversations. Do we store things on disk or tape? Do we work with Macs or PCs? When the cloud hit us a handful of years ago, it came on the scene as this ubiquitous offering that we didn't know a whole lot about, but the concept was, wow, can we put everything in the cloud? And it became another one of these either or conversations. Are we putting everything in the cloud? Or are we working with everything on-prem? The fact that we didn't know a lot about the cloud when it first came out and how it worked has really changed. A handful of years ago, people didn't talk about object storage. They really hadn't heard of it. It was just all file systems. Likewise, no one had heard of an S3 interface. That's much more familiar today. And as we understand the technology behind the cloud, what we've realized is we can apply that technology on-prem and really get the best of all worlds and all offerings. And that is how most of those either-or conversations have typically ended. So today, what we're going to explore, and the reason our conversation is embracing the cloud with On-Prem Glacier seems contradictory, is because we found that by working with object storage and S3 interfaces, we can eliminate the either or and say, let's get the best of cloud and the best of on-prem, bring them together, get rid of the silos, and have a really dynamic solution. So that is what we're going to cover today. With no further ado, I'll introduce Mr. David Feller, who is our Vice President of Product Management and Solution Engineering, and he is going to walk us through this conversation. So David, over to you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Bob. And welcome to everybody. This will be a lot of fun. I think the world, as far as data storage, has been changing pretty dramatically over the last, 7 to 10 years. And we're at a really amazing point in time where we have a lot more choices than we've had before, as certainly as vendors, of course, but also as customers and sales folks all over the world. There's new ways to do things, and I think that's what we're going to talk about today. Again, I run products essentially for Spectra, so we're going to have I'll keep it light on the technical side, but I want to show you how a lot of our customers are using these solutions and how they're really making some of these choices that Bob just talked about. At the top level, the whole concept of data storage is really interesting, and of course, data continues to grow. We publish this yearly report that I really would encourage everybody to take a look at, that talks about what is the total creation of data that's going on worldwide, and in fact, how much of that is actually getting stored. One of the really interesting things is, if you go back, 10 years, a lot of the long-term storage, that people were investing in, there was always this uncertainty. How is it going to be used? And, if you guys are following, artificial intelligence, the AI world, one of the greatest benefits there is the ability to analyze and understand these, big repositories of stored data, and the ability to make it usable and bring value to that long-term stored data. So this is one of the charts I really expect to change over the next couple of years as AI begins to dive in and really analyze those, exabytes and more of data that's been stored. You'll see a lot more of that data be valuable. We saw it in COVID, in fact. in the media and entertainment industry. I don't know if you guys were really watching closely, but a lot of the shows weren't in real-time productions. We all ended up watching reruns of things, sometimes 20 years old for almost a year. So that was a great example of the ability to monetize something that's been stored a long time. But, for the rest of us, as Bob said, it's really been about how do we use the cloud properly and use it most effectively. And of course, if you go back 5-8 years, it was all about, should I go to the cloud? And then it was, why wouldn't I go to the cloud? And in fact, a lot of organizations put a cloud first mandate, in fact, in place that said, if you're not going to use the cloud, you need to justify it. But what we see coming, and a lot of companies have already started, is this mandate that we're going to use multiple clouds. In fact, multiple clouds simultaneously. And that creates perhaps some chaos of back to the old days of, where's your data? Well, it's on this server. Go to this address, and this is where it is. But how do you, when we talk hybrid cloud, I think there's going to be a new definition. It's not just a combination of on-prem and cloud. It's on-prem, multiple clouds, multiple cloud services, and AI all together. And that's what we think the world is headed towards. Hey, Bob, I think the first polling question.
Yeah, and I apologize. I was muted there and had to find my button. First polling question already. We're coming early on. Will hybrid cloud be a part of your strategy over the next 2 years? I'm going to launch that question, and everyone will be able to vote. So we'd like you to tell us, do you foresee this hybrid mix as a part of your strategy over the next coming few years? And we'll let people continue to vote before we end this poll and share the results. People are voting in now, so most of you have it figured out. Give it just another minute.
It's a test to make sure you can work the technology.
And I failed the first part of that, but on board now. All right, it looks like we've got it ready, and this is interesting. I'm going to end poll, and that will share the results. All right.
Everybody's coming.
Look at this.
Absolutely.
So 96% versus 4%. So David, it seems like that's what you're kind of expecting, but what would you say about that? That's huge.
Yeah. So the last webinar we did close to this, that was 6 months ago. This was almost a 50-50 result. So this last 6 months has really been an awakening of what multi-cloud really means. And by the way, if you guys haven't gone, AWS puts on an incredible show in December where they talk about all the different cloud services, and other cloud vendors, of course, have them. But that's worth going to in Vegas if you're not already signed up for that.
Great. Okay, back to you.
Deal. So this is not a product day specifically for Spectra, but before we get into the conversation of how our customers really solving some of these problems, it is definitely worth a real quick overview of the solutions that we have so that you understand the building blocks that we're going to talk about. Of course, we've been in business. We usually, at conversations, we start off with, hey, we've been in business for 46, 47 years. And, here's the 100 customers and 10,000 deployments and patents and all that fun stuff. But really, if you've heard of Spectra, what the main thing that people think about when they hear about Spectra is our tape solutions, because that's been the place where we've led the industry for, about 40 years or 30 at least on the tape side. But of course, we're significantly more than that on the hardware side. We've got a gateway to tape. We provide some pretty comprehensive NAS solutions, scalable up to 20 petabytes ahead, scale up kind of systems. But what's really interesting, and if you've been following what we've been doing for the last 10, 15 years, we're very, very heavily invested in data management and software in particular. So real high level, we've got a software product, standalone software product. In fact, you don't have to buy any Spectra hardware behind it, that's really designed for digital archives. So the ability to look into all kinds of primary storage, cloud storage, whatever, and both make intelligent decisions about what needs to be moved off to a longer SLA, to tape or cloud, or maybe a cheaper disk solution to tier it off, but also the ability to move it off as a project, to take big bulk groups of objects and move it to a lower cost tier. So StoreCycle is that product, and we're not going to talk a lot about it today, but you'll find a lot of information on that product as well on our website, and there's a full wiki about the product where you can see demos as well. We also, for the last, again, 10 years or so, have been very heavily invested in the media and entertainment industry. In fact, pretty much, I generalize a little bit, but almost every TV show that you watch probably came off of Spectra equipment somewhere. We're everywhere in this particular space, from object storage to tape, archive systems, and we've got a data mover product that's specifically designed to interface with for all the video editors and archivists in that particular business. And you'll find that's a very prevalent product for media and entertainment. Over the last 2.5 years, we've been very heavily invested in hybrid cloud. So this concept of a virtual object store. So we've got a software package that presents a worldwide virtual object storage system. But today, what we're going to really be focusing on is this concept of hybrid cloud storage. So we've got this Black Pearl product. We'll show you on the very next slide. Very simple appliance product that presents an S3 interface and then can use on-prem disk and on-prem tape to essentially present an on-prem Glacier layer to pretty much any client software that understands how to talk S3. So we're going to focus on that today and how that really can transform all different types of storage methodologies. The portfolio, a different way to look at it that maybe simplifies how all these pieces fit together. On the left, we've got a whole variety of data management software, from the virtual object store on the top that we talked about, to data management, data archive, digital archive in the middle, to the data mover specifically for media and entertainment. So those are standalone software packages that don't require Spectra hardware, but fulfill different data management needs in a typical enterprise. We also offer this standard platform, and we call it Black Pearl. It's basically a server running our specific software that's designed to have multiple personality. So there's a platform, a hardware platform, but it is capable of being just a NAS, being a bulk NAS scale up system. We actually, I'm a product guy, so I'd love to dive in and show you, speeds and feeds and processors and all that stuff. But frankly, it's really boring. It's a NAS. It's a relatively fast NAS that's good for, tier 1, tier 2 kinds of storage. That same box can have a personality that presents that storage as S3 standard disk. So any client that understands how to talk to Amazon can use our box as on-prem S3 very simply, and we're going to go into detail on that. Interestingly, we've got multiple different tiers, multiple different layers underneath. We've got an infrequent access layer that's roughly equivalent, you'll see in a minute, to what Amazon offers. So they offer they differentiate based on cost. We actually have a spin down layer as well. So I have a disk layer that when you're not accessing it, the disks spin down. So it's infrequent access and instant retrieval compatible. But that same box can also take a tape library using embedded Veil software. You see the Veil software standalone on the left. We can actually run it on our box as well. Then we can take that tape library and present it as Glacier. So what you're going to see in all of our marketing materials is we uniquely have an on-prem Glacier system that looks and feels like Amazon as far as clients are concerned, but we're presenting all that as an on-prem option as well. But it's fully integrated with the cloud, and you'll see how that works together. So let's do a quick comparison. If you look at what Amazon offers from a Glacier offering, so they've got multiple different layers of what they call Glacier. So there's a instant retrieval. It's basically a disk layer. Turns out it's the same layer as S3 standard and IA. It's just they charge you differently. They've got their traditional, their Glacier flexible retrieval layer, and then over the last year and a half, they've got their Glacier Deep Archive layer. What's really interesting here is Spectra, through that system that we just showed you, can provide all of the same tiers on-prem that work directly with the Amazon public cloud layer. So you can drop data in one of our buckets and tell it that I want it on-prem, or I want that object on-prem for a certain period of time, then I want it in the Amazon Glacier, or I want it in Glacier first and bring it back local. But we have all of the same tiers with a lot of advantages. And we're going to talk about what the advantages of the on-prem system are. But again, they work dynamically together. So the same policy engine can move data back and forth between Amazon layers, between Azure, Google, Wasabi, there's quite a few others. So they all work together. It's just Amazon did us a favor in marketing this term Glacier. And, they've got a lot bigger marketing organization than I think all the engineers and all the IT groups worldwide. And they've done a good job at explaining what Glacier means.
And David, just to be clear on this slide, so this is what eliminates the either or conversation in this conversation, right? You can use on-prem Glacier in addition to in the cloud Glacier if you see a reason to do that, or take advantage of one or the other. It's nothing's mutually exclusive, correct?
Absolutely. And what you're going to see the rest of this morning is we're going to show you what an on-prem solution looks like and what the advantages of having that as part of the portfolio are. But the beauty of the Spectra solution is that it doesn't stop there. We're not saying don't use the cloud, use on-prem only. We say, here, let's add on-prem as part of your portfolio and integrate it directly with a hybrid system. So I can dynamically over time move things back and forth to the cloud. In fact, we present a single namespace to the cloud. So an end user accesses the data and they don't really even need to know where it is. We'll take care of tiering it and putting it in the appropriate place for you based on policies that you set.
Beautiful.
So a great example is a conversation we've been having with universities worldwide. I actually just got back from a tour of the UK talking to a variety of universities, the big ones over there. But it turns out, just like so many other things, we're all the same. And the universities in the UK have the same issues that they have in the US. And one of the most common ones is if you talk about it over in the UK, they talk about, colleges, Trinity College, King's College, whatever is part of Cambridge or Oxford. If you talk about it in the US, it's departments, the business department, the engineering department, split up a little bit different, but it's still part of a university system. Typically, each department or college has their own IT group, and they're trying to implement their own storage. And when it fills up, they buy more. And because they're not centralized, the easy answer is, hey, my stuff is full. I'm just going to buy more. I don't even know what it is. And they're trying to figure out quotas and all of that, but it's a problem. Some of the groups, the research groups, usually the physics folks, invest in longer term storage, high performance computing, because they're dealing with just tremendous amounts of data. So it's very frequent that when we go in to talk to university, we're talking to physics, research, biomed, that sort of thing, to talk about installing a tape library and then the software that goes around it to make that work. The business guys, love you all, but usually they're going down to Best Buy and they're buying USB connected drives. They dump stuff onto it, and then more often than not, the IT group is saying, I don't know what happened. They plugged it in and now somebody unplugged it and I can't find the desk drawer that it's in. That's the conversation that usually goes on there. The computer science people tend to put more in the cloud and appropriately, but it is a fun conversation because all of them also want to back up their data, and everybody's got unique backup requirements. Some want Commvault or Veeam for this, or Bacula or whatever it is. And the computer science guys are usually going after the more modern, S3 out, Rubrik or Cohesity. And so they've all got their own backup requirements. Meanwhile, there's this centralized IT department that's saying, hey, well, this is ridiculous. Why can't we all just share? Let's set up a centralized system. It's more efficient. I can set up from scratch a hybrid approach. We need to be sharing data. And so there's this new push where IT is trying to centralize and provide a common set of services. So that's the setup. Now, what are those common services? And this is common to not just universities, but pretty much every enterprise on the planet. We're trying to accomplish the same set of things. Some way to do automated tiering and archive. And again, if you recall from just a minute ago, we got that. We've got a software solution that provides that. Most universities, in fact, have a full media and entertainment department that not everybody is aware of. You do sports, you do all kinds of university productions. It's almost as big as, the Channel 9 in Denver or whatever it is. Most universities have a media department. Do we have we got a software solution that handles that. Consolidated backup is really interesting. And you'll see in a minute, we're going to talk about how backup has evolved from, you back up just to a NAS box to some of them traditionally work to tape, but the new thing is you back up to S3. So how do I provide a single consolidated backup target that all the different departments can use, even though they're all choosing their own, backup systems? Again, that's where this Veil system comes in. I can use Black Pearl to provide NAS. I can use Black Pearl to provide S3. And in fact, I can make multiple copies. And that goes as well for the research guys that are trying to use S3 native. And really interesting, especially if the physics guys that installed a tape library and maybe have some spare capacity, our system can then grab, unused capacity in that tape library and make it look like a big Glacier USB stick and present it to everybody as On-Prem Glacier, essentially a shared archive. So now the central IT department has a really powerful set of services that they can offer to all the different departments. Now, you can substitute and think about that as marketing and engineering and sales in a typical IT environment. What are all the things that I need to accomplish? File sharing, universal file sharing, On-Prem Glacier, long-term archive storage. Now the central IT department can offer those consolidated services once you take a look at all of the different offerings that Spectra has to offer. So I think we'll wrap that quick conversation up with, there's 3 quick things to talk about. First is why object storage? And I think everybody's figured this out over the last, 7 to 8 years, but a quick recap. Object storage generically is more scalable. It's easier to protect with things like multiple copies, ransomware protection for multiple copies, object lock and such. It's much better for sharing because I present a single object to the end user, but I can have multiple copies of it behind. And those multiple copies can be in multiple places. You can put them in multiple sites, multiple nodes. You can dynamically share data, in fact, right on the internet if you want to. And it's a little bit different than the file system because object storage really is made to be a shared cloud approach. And the big thing is S3, especially as you grow, is easier. And this multi-copy approach presents a lower cost alternative to most any other kind of storage. The second discussion there is, well, okay, object storage is great. Why would an on-prem Glacier solution be an advantage? Why would I consider that? Well, of course, cost is a big deal. Now, cost isn't the only thing, but it is very important in almost every installation. If you're storing data long-term, the question is a public cloud versus an on-prem solution. One of the biggest differentiators is how much it costs you to get stuff back, this egress fee. There is no egress fee for an on-prem solution. So even with very, very small egress numbers, like retrieving 5% of your data per year, an on-prem solution pays for itself in, typically 7 or 8 months. For, really large installations, 100 petabytes or so, 100 petabytes, big installations, that might take a year and a half, but it's still a significant advantage from a cost standpoint. And now that I have multiple tiers behind it, it's very advantageous to have multiple on-prem tiers that go nicely with the cloud systems. On-Prem Glacier does provide really interesting ransomware resiliency. Of course, it's faster to get things back locally. It costs you less. And an interesting little tidbit that we found when we were looking at, when we got hit with ransomware about 3 years ago, was the first thing we did when we got hit by ransomware. We had to shut off all internet access, partially because the ransomware tool, NetWalker, also opened up a bunch of ports so that they could sell access to our servers. That was part of what was going on. So we immediately just shut down access. Well, that means if I've shut down all internet access, I don't have access to the public cloud. So our entire recovery for the first day was all local, because I had lost internet access as a result of that ransomware. A little thing not everybody thinks about.
And because I can't not jump in and make this comment, we did recover all of our data. We did not pay a ransom, and it was a happy ending, but it was a little stressful.
I was when it happened, I was on a webinar just like this, and the IT director was, emailing me, and I said, "Well, send me the file." And I probably made a poor life choice, but I showed the file to everybody, and it had here's your customer number essentially, and the email address, to contact us. And there are 500 people or something on the webinar. And I said, hey, how about just for fun, everybody emails this guy and tells him to go take a leap because Spectre is protected. Wasn't maybe the best choice, but it felt really good. And yeah, we decided not to pay. It's a good thing we decided not to pay. It probably would have doubled our price. Anyway. Data sovereignty is really important for a variety of different reasons. Sometimes you've got data requirements. I've got to keep a copy on-prem because of some legal restriction, or I've got to keep it in country or something. But just as important, something people don't really think about is this cloud lock-in concept. Let's say you go completely to Amazon and you put all of your data up there. And then, by the way, a few years ago, people like Wasabi have popped up. That's lower cost, faster access. Now, they don't have all of the features of Amazon, but for some portion of that business, they're definitely a better choice for some types of storage. Well, if all my data is up in Amazon, I can't really afford to get it back and then shove it over to Wasabi. If I have an on-prem copy, just one copy, I can push a button and just abandon big chunks of data in Amazon and use some other cloud. So this ability to not be locked in by a cloud is really important. And of course, some customers are trying to decide when to go to the cloud. Well, let's invest in a hybrid cloud system now, even if you're not going to go to the public cloud yet, you can do that next year, or you can do that 6 months from now with the push of a button, and it's not a big problem. And of course, there's data governance and legal rules. So there's some really important reasons to consider On-Prem Glacier.
And I'll jump in one more time to say quickly, if you look in your chat box, Katie Jones, our operator behind the scenes, is going to drop in an interesting blog that shows us ROI calculations and some other interesting aspects of that last slide. So look at that blog and check it out.
So last texty slide, and then we get into pictures and fun stuff about how customers are using this, and a little bit of the evolution of the backup industry. Really important things now to look at. So we talked about why object storage, why On-Prem Glacier is important, but now what are some key things to look for in an on-prem object store? Because there's a lot of solutions out there. There's folks that have really specialized in just disk. There's a few recently that have talked about On-Prem Glacier, but there's a lot of differences in the offerings that are out there. So it's important to what's important, what's really important. Universal compatibility is important. This desire to be as compatible with AWS S3 as possible is really critical. And it's important because S3 isn't really like an IEEE standard. It's an interface that was designed essentially by a private company that we're all following, and they're in charge of it. They've done a really great job of consistency, but that ability to look and feel like AWS S3 is really critical. Just being off by a little bit might mean some client doesn't work. So it's full compliance plus broad client testing, which of course, Spectre is big on. Open standards is really critical. So stay away from anything that uses special coding, or there's a lot of people talking about, I need to do erasure coding or RAID on disk or RAID on tape and all these other things. Any one of those systems make you beholden to that vendor forever. It just recreates the whole vendor lock-in discussion. Open standards is key. We need to, everybody needs to be saving things in open format. Stay away from anything that's, makes you dependent on a particular vendor. There's a lot of ways to tackle, cost and scale out kinds of problems. And the worst way is to go proprietary. Multiple tiers is really critical. So watch for systems that can handle multiple tiers. We talked about that a minute ago, that support multiple disk tiers, multiple tape, multiple Glacier kinds of tiers. And then when we get down to On-Prem Glacier, this is really critical. There's two different ways, if you think about it, to access long-term storage. There is a special version of S3 that understands long SLA, that understands, hey, I'm going to ask for something and I might not get it back for a few minutes. AWS pioneered it, this S3 Glacier capability. But what is really unique to Spectra is we don't require that. It's important. It makes everything work better. But we work with just plain old standard S3. Even if your client has no knowledge of Glacier or a long SLA tier, you can use just standard S3 to talk to our systems, even tape systems. And that's really unique. We're the only company out there that does that, provides the interface to both S3 and S3 Glacier. It's really important. You look for systems that, pack small objects, not just tape, but Glacier. In fact, Amazon's Glacier is bad at small objects. It costs you a lot of money. So you want to pack when you send to Amazon's Glacier, but you want to pack when you send a tape as well, and group things, zip them, systems that'll do that automatically, so that you get the best of both worlds. And of course, this concept of handling multi-copy and ejected copy, which is a lot harder than you might imagine. The big thing on here, and we have to toot our own horn just a little bit, is this concept of comprehensive tape handling. It's one thing to say, I've got this, in the engineering, we call it happy path. Can I get an object onto tape and can I get it back? Okay, that's not terribly hard. A variety of companies that can do that. Can you then handle that tape system for the next 20 years? Error handling, migration, self-healing. That happy path, which is many of the products that are out there, it's their entire code base, just to get something down to tape and get it back, might be 20% of our code. 80% of our code is how do you deal with all those tough tape situations? A tape's out of the library, one's broken, one of my 2 copies is bad, the tape drive malfunctioned. What do I do? How do I recover? I want to migrate from LTO 5 to LTO 9, or when 10 comes out, just push a button and migrate. That's the hard part about On-Prem Glacier, and that's where Spectra really shines. So let's talk about some use. How do you actually use this? Backup is huge here, and has evolved dramatically over the last, even 3 years. Backup has evolved dramatically. If we go back just a little while, there were a variety of leaders in this space. They're all still great companies, but their original methodology was to back up directly to a NAS or directly to a tape library. So it's software that had direct interfaces. Then entered a few years ago a new class of backup systems that were focused on less storage capacity. So how do I back up using less physical storage? And their primary market was backing up to the cloud, to S3. And they pioneered a whole new category of backup. Folks like Rubrik and Cohesity, and a few others like them. They pioneered this new concept. Well, it turns out everybody went, crap, that's a great idea, and everybody else followed. So everybody now has some kind of S3 out to the cloud, but not all of them have considered, well, backup to the cloud's great, but same conversations we just had: cost, data sovereignty, data governance. There might be some rules that say I need a copy local. How do I have an on-prem copy of that backup? Or how do I exclusively back up locally? S3 is still an excellent choice for all of the reasons we talked about. Object storage is a great choice. On-prem Glacier is a great choice. So here comes Spectra with this ability to use a standard S3 interface to get to S3 disk or on-prem Glacier tape through that S3 interface. So now, if you want to still save directly to tape or disk like you have for the last 20 years, it'll still work. But now we presented S3 interface to those new storage classes. And once I've done that, I've got a multi-tenant system. I can have a backup system that presents a S3 bucket for backup, And hey, I got it anyway, so let's present an S3 bucket for archive and one for the data management and one for media and entertainment. So I have one multi-tenant system that works for multiple things.
And we have got a lot of questions coming in, so we're going to get those to the end, so hang with us, and we're getting close there. But let's launch a really quick poll. Obviously, we support pretty much all of the backup applications out there, but we're curious to find out what applications you are working with. Out of those, top 5 or 6 that we normally see, or maybe it's other, be interesting to see. So we're going to give everybody a minute to vote on this, and we've got those votes coming in quickly. Not only did I launch this better, you guys are answering more quickly. So we got the hang of it. All right, we'll give it one more minute to get those votes in. We are almost at 100%. They're changing.
Oh, and you just have to make one choice. That makes it harder to.
Right. You could have multiple. Sorry about that. We should have put that one in. Pick your favorite of the multiple you may be working with. All right. We've still got votes coming in.
And this helps us too. We're always trying to figure out, what's the best place to go partner, and where do we need to focus our testing efforts. So thank you for the input, by the way.
All right. And here we go. We're going to share those results.
Other.
Okay. Interesting. Other is a lot. So there are a lot of applications out there, obviously.
Yeah, there's a lot of them out there.
It's a good thing we work with all of them. What do you think about that, David? Any thoughts?
Yeah, so that's interesting. Again, 6 months ago, it was a pretty different story. Cohesity and Rubric are jumping up there. Now it's slow, but
starting to show up. Yeah. All right, great. Back to you now.
So let's look at about how this is actually used, and then I think we give you 3 quick examples, and we'll wrap up for the day. So let's talk about On-Prem Glacier specifically in 3 different industries. First one is energy, and we're gonna go into a little bit of detail here and show you what the policies look like and how they're doing it. But essentially, this particular company down in the South was looking for a new way to long-term store records, and part of it came from legal retention requirements, bills, customer interactions, that sort of thing that need to be pulled up, especially in the case of lawsuits and such. And they had a traditional system to do that. We actually already had tape systems in there, but they were looking for a refresh, a new way to protect data, to provide ransomware protection, a fully owned copy. Now, so they originally did have some things in AWS, but because they were touching the data so much and recovering items, it turns out it was relatively expensive to have that cloud copy. So we came in and said, hey, let's use all of those tools that we just talked about this morning, a Black Pearl appliance, presenting S3 to a newer backup system, and reuse some of those libraries that you already have. So in this particular case, they got to reuse a big set of hardware that was already on site in 2 different locations, and then just present it as S3, so it would work with a newer backup system. They eventually chose Rubric. Their particular application, they've got 2 different sites that replicate to each other, so that's how they have 2 copies. You'll see in a minute they've actually got a third, but they ended up having I think 40 or 50 different. Rubric offers their own backup appliance they call a brick, 40 or 50 of those all hitting us at the same time, up to roughly 6 gigabyte per second at each location. So pretty significant backup system. But what we did is the data remains on the built-in Rubric system for the first 30 days. That's where actually a lot of the initial data checks go on, and the quick restores happen right from the Rubric system. It offloads to our Black Pearl S3 as an S3 on-prem disk for the next 90 days. We use our built-in policies then to take those copies and push it off to tape as Glacier for long-term retention. And that gets stored both locally, and then turns out they're still doing the traditional, make a second copy, eject it, and then they get a company to come pick it up and put it in a salt mine for really long-term retention. This is a company that really understands the balance of the need for quick recovery, great data retention, and data protection. So it's that, we always talked about the 3-2-1. This is like 4-2-4 or something from a data retention standpoint. So we love customers like this, of course, because as a storage company, our preference would be, make 12 copies. That's always a good choice, but not necessary in most cases. In the banking industry, very similar thing going on. This desire to back up ended up resulting in just this tremendous thrash of the backup appliance, and this need to just keep adding more and more storage over time that ended up being relatively expensive. So cost kept growing because of the style of the backup package. So again, a different one. This one happened to be Cohesity. They came in and said, "Hey, let's offer both a disk and a tape solution together, presented as S3." And the really interesting part here is Cohesity, of course, has S3 Glacier, but for on-prem solutions, they only talk standard S3. So there's no concept of a long SLA on-prem solution. There's no S3 Glacier offering behind a Cohesity. Great. Enter Spectra. We've got standard S3. So Cohesity thinks they're talking to Amazon S3 standard in the cloud. Turns out behind it, it's actually disk and tape systems that are presented as S3, and it works flawlessly. There's even an ejected copy. When you do a restore, Cohesity does an S3 get to our system. We basically stall Cohesity and say, "Oh, be there in a minute." And we tell the admin, "Hey, go get this ejected tape copy back." And even if it's days later, they insert the tape loads, and Cohesity gets the response back to the end user. So nothing falls through the cracks. It works with standard S3. It's a really elegant solution. And then the last one, medical industry. You might think this is, oh crap, that requires, one of the really big powerhouse folks in disk storage. Well, turns out everybody's in the same boat from a data protection standpoint. A lot of data governance rules in the medical industry, and a lot of multi-site requirements. This particular medical group has sites all over the world, multiple countries. And again, using a modern backup system, we can pop in, and they used our StoreCycle product to move data out of AWS into an on-prem S3 solution to mitigate some costs while they continue to use AWS, but making sure we have a local copy, because that was their only copy. And then we're presenting S3 as On-Prem Glacier to round out that approach. So really amazing solution there.
Outstanding presentation, David Feller. So we're about to jump to the Q&A, but also if you look in your chat box again, Katie's going to drop a link if you'd like to have a deeper conversation with one of our solution architects about the solution or how it might work for you. Use that link and we would love to work with you on it. So let's go to the Q&A. We've had quite a few come in and it looks like we've got time to handle them. I'm just going to take them in order they came in. Yes, you can get a copy of this presentation. It will go out to all of the attendees, or actually all of the registrants. So you'll get it whether you attended or not. You'll get that link. Next question. What is the space footprint in rack units of a SpectraLogic box? Now it says with 20 terabytes of space, but when you first started out, David, you mentioned 20 petabytes of space, and that's probably what that question's about. So 20 petabytes of space, what would that footprint look like?
So our appliance, our physical appliance that presents storage, so that Black Pearl S3 starts, the smallest one we offer is actually a 2U, and you can do about 300 terabytes in 2U. I'll have to get that number exactly. 20 petabytes, we actually tend to go bulk storage. So we use big 20 terabyte drives, and I can fit that in a single rack with the head unit. So 42U rack can handle upwards of 20 petabytes.
Okay, great. And that user
significantly more than that if you go tape.
Right. And that was for a disk-only solution, 20
That's
petabytes. Tape, it's just over the top. And that user did write in that was correct. They were talking about 20 petabytes. Okay, next up on that is, can you build an on-prem Glacier with S3 disk only, or does it require tape?
No, absolutely. The beauty of the system is it's very flexible. So you can start with just S3 disk. And again, if you buy the little 2U, so a Black Pearl, we call it a V, is a 2U box with, I think it's got 21 drive slots and some NVMe slots. So, you can start with just as few as small as a few terabytes. We like to start with, 20, 40, 50, kind of in that range is probably economical. But you can start with just disk. So it's just basically S3 disk without any other requirements. But the same system, you can just plug a tape library into, you can plug JBODs into, you can expand the same system up to 20 petabytes of disk and, an exabyte of tape behind it just by plugging more modular things into it.
Right. Okay, great. Next question. Object storage is great, but most organizations still use file systems and historically SMB gateways into S3 haven't been very good for scalability. Has Spectra addressed this in any special way, or does this remain an issue? Good question.
Excellent question. And especially in universities, this is a really big thing. So two key things going on here are StoreCycle product is one of those major products that bridges the gap between the file and the object storage world. So it does it seamlessly in the background. In fact, it has the ability to move stuff off and leave little breadcrumbs, links behind. So purely from a file system, never looking at software, you can automatically archive and restore data into an object storage system behind the scenes using a product like StoreCycle. There's also really amazing tools out there that we're partnered with that essentially can mount an object storage system as if it were just another network drive. So I don't have it flippable on my computer, but I've got, 10 petabytes of object storage that just look like network drives on my Mac, and I can just access them. Now, you use object storage a little bit differently. I'm not going to open it and dynamically change it. I want to move it out of it, use it, and then put it back. But yeah, that world has changed dramatically in the last few years.
Great. Here's a fun one. Many years ago, you ran a product based on ZFS called Verde NAS. You remember Verde, David. Why did you end of life that product out of interest? It was pretty cool. So votes up for Verde NAS. But what is Verde NAS today?
It was pretty cool. This pirate movie came out, and we fell on the bandwagon. No, it's not really true. But it basically is the evolution of that product is now Black Pearl NAS. It's got all the same core innards. It runs ZFS under the hood. So it's an enterprise grade ZFS system that kind of hides all of that complexity and presents a simple GUI to you. And we just consolidated it into one product set to make it easier to understand.
Yeah, and that's, I just want to say a little side note there that you mentioned this happy path to tape, and there are some organizations that know they can now pick up an object and move it and put it on tape and pull that object back. But everything you see behind Spectra's on-prem Glacier solution is something that's been in evolution over the last 30 or 40 years that we've been in business. So that's an example of solutions that have found new uses through new software interfaces that we've developed that have developed over time. So good question. All right, and we're almost at the end. A few more coming in, so keep them coming in. How about aerospace and defense customers? Any examples of them using your solutions? So I don't know who we can disclose or not. I will say it's next to media and entertainment. Federal business is our number one vertical, so we do have a lot of presence there. Anything you would say about that, David?
Probably more storage into that. I'll categorize that as high performance computing, federal defense. We've actually sold more there probably than any other market from a total capacity standpoint. It turns out they're some of the ones that buy the huge libraries. Like the biggest library on the planet is Los Alamos Labs down in New Mexico.
Correct.
It's just incredible how much data they store. What they do with it, nobody knows.
And that is a SpectraLogic Tfinity on the back end tape library of that particular, and that is a public case, so we can't talk about that one.
But
All right.
yeah, all of them are looking at and converting over to object storage in one form or another, because it's the way of the future. It's the efficient way to go.
Okay, next up, Cohesity is using erasure coding. In the given example, does it affect the Spectra S3 storage? Are the customers trapped with Cohesity? We talked about, vendor lock-in or proprietary formats.
So Cohesity, Rubric, Commvault, others, essentially, as long as you use the right backup methodology, and that's one that either has periodic fulls or synthetic fulls, it works great with things like tape. So they end up doing all of that fun stuff on the front end, dedupe and hashing and all of that, and then they just send us big chunks. As long as those chunks are relatively self-contained, it works great with an on-prem Glacier solution. So yeah, it works great. In the Cohesity case, I think there's 6 different backup methodologies you can use. Their Cloud Archive, their CA1, for instance, is really optimized for things like tape. And each one of the vendors have a different one that's best for long-term tape solutions.
Hey, great. And there's a thanks for covering all the Q&A. Last question is LANL, L-A-N-L, Los Alamos National Labs ? And that is correct. And I think we have probably got a case study somewhere on that. I know we've done some interviews with them. If you dig on our website, you'll find that. So please feel free to join us on the website. And that is it for the Q&A. I want to thank everybody for being with us today. Thank you, David Feller, for an outstanding conversation as always. Visit us at spectralogic.com. You will see, oh, interesting, in the chat, there's a case study that just got dropped in on Los Alamos National Laboratories. So you can get details on that one. So again, spectralogic.com. We'd love to communicate more with you. So reach out with any questions, and we will look forward to the next time. Thanks, everybody.